Welcome back to Savoring Success. As usual, Ricardo and I have a beautiful podcast sorted out for you guys. But today we have a very special guest, and I'm going to let Ricardo this time do the introduction as he's a very good friend of Ricardo. Come on.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about this guy. This man, I should say, this gentleman, is a legend throughout Cardiff. He's been in business for well over 40 years. We're also in the same game, we'll say. We're in the restaurant world, but this gentleman that we have with us today has a lot of knowledge to share. Now, we always say with this podcast, we always have our young boys in mind. So the idea is to preach and inspire the younger generation, share some stories and our experiences. But for this podcast, we are going to let this man show his stories, tell his stories, and share his experience and knowledge on life, business, success, failures, and everything in between. So today I'm going to bring you the man that is called Giovanni Malacrino.
Ciao.
It's a pleasure to have you on.
A pleasure. No, it's good. I think life is all about really sharing your knowledge. So in life, to learn, you must teach, and to teach, you must make mistakes.
Exactly. I think we come from, we got young families.
Yeah.
The idea of these videos is to should there be a day that we're not here, our kids have always got this content that they can relate back to and see what our thoughts and experiences and things were in life and business. Yeah. Should they go into business? Who knows?
They decide.
But we got the master with us today.
Also in life, if you keep a journal, even record these days, it's very easy to keep a journal.
Yeah. Everything is videos these days.
Yeah, you just record it and just put it down. So.
In a video, everyone talks about the success and what the person's achieved, rather than who the man is behind the success. So, my first question to you is, who was Giovanni Malacrino growing up in school as a kid? What were you like? What were your friends like? What was your circles like? What was your ambitions when you were a kid? What kind of child were you growing up?
But did you grow up in the UK?
Yeah, I was born in Italy. I came here when I was 3. Okay. Over the years, my father wanted me to only speak Italian. So when we were in school, we spoke English, and when we were home, we spoke Italian. And my sister and I used to hide in a cupboard to speak English. so our father couldn't hear us talk in English, which was quite funny,
Yeah.
I think my father always wanted us to go back to live in Italy, but then as you grow up in school, and stuff, and you get older, and then that dream goes away. So to come here as an immigrant and then hope to go back home once you've made some money, didn't happen because we then had friends and
you buy a house, you settle in.
What line of work did your parents kind of get into when you guys come here?
So my father used to work in the dialloy, which was they used to make metal and things for the roofs and stuff, out of aluminium, and also used to work in a place where they made tires as well. So it was the jobs that other people didn't want, basically, It was the very, very hard jobs in those days, And those days there was no support, so either you worked or you starved. So there was no sort of, you had to work hard. And for a year, he couldn't change jobs. When he came to this country, he had to work in the same factory for 12 months and then apply for a new job.
Right.
If you left after a few months, you just go back to Italy,
It's quite ironic because that's how Britain was kind of built, wasn't it? By immigrants coming in. Taking the jobs that they didn't want, which is why we're in a bit of a mess that we're in now.
So I think so I literally then went to school in St. Patrick's, and then when I was 11, I went to a school called Mostyn, which was a great Catholic school.
Yeah. So you grew up Catholic.
Yeah. And it was great, but I was always unable to focus. I was always busy, always sort of. My exam results were always. If Giovanni concentrated more, he'd do very well. But I had a very busy mind. In those days, there was no titles for these minds. These days you may say it's a bit of ADHD, Always doing lots of things. But I was always disrupting the class, never listening,
Right.
But then I managed to sort of, pass my exams, because I bought the results from the year before. So I was an entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur, businessman since little.
Would you class yourself as intellectual, kind of, or just a bit more street smart? And
a combination of both. I think intellectual you become.
Yes.
street smart, you're born with. It's got to be
Yes,
in your
exactly.
in your body.
Yeah,
So it's a sixth sense where all of a sudden you know what's going on behind you, to your right, to your left. To forget the front.
Yeah.
But left, right, and behind. Always watch your back.
But those years through, because obviously I have a similar situation, as in I came quite young to the UK. My parents didn't speak English and stuff like that. And did you find yourself? I'm sure you learned English a lot faster than them. Did you find yourself having to sort out family business as well as doing your things, or they were able to do their thing there on their own?
Not necessarily. I mean, what I found was bullying. Because I was Italian. There was all the case of they used to say that we eat worms. It was just quite funny. And now the biggest dish is spaghetti bolognese.
Spaghetti, yeah.
In those days, they'd say, "Oh, you eat worms." And my father once bought a chip shop in Grangetown, called Malacrino's. Okay. He only bought it for my mother and father to. He only bought it for my mother and grandmother to run, just as a little sideline,
Yeah.
And then all my mother and grandmother did, they just cleaned the shop out. They literally cleaned the shop out. They changed the oil, give it a real good paint up. And then within about 2 months, there was queues down the street. Yeah. Everybody went there because we did spaghetti, we did different dishes as well. Yeah. So my father would take a crash course on cooking, my father,
Yeah.
And then it became one of the most famous chip shops in Grangetown called Malacrino's.
So I was trying to explain to people the difference that you got Italians and you got Welsh.
Yeah.
You have his own thing, Welsh Italian.
Yeah.
Right. It's like his own nation.
Yeah.
Right. But I think a lot of Italians brought fish and chips over to Wales. Is that right? They started opening fish and chip shops.
Yeah. I mean, the fish and chips were here for a long time. I think we can't take the fish and chips away from the
Welsh.
From the Brits, I don't think. That'd be wrong. It's like them licking our spaghetti. When they say it's Chinese, it's not, it's Italian,
Well, there is a story with Marco Polo, isn't there?
That's right.
We stole it from China.
That's right. We stole it.
Yeah.
So, but in those days, it was just survival. You had to, the harder you worked, the more successful you were. Yeah. It hasn't changed. It's exactly the same now, People think, you're lucky. You make your own luck in life, So during school, although I wasn't, I wasn't academic. I wasn't. I was the first kid to take cookery lessons in school, and then a year after, 15 other people joined, So I was always the person that did the first, And I did this because it was more fun cooking than bloody
reading books.
Yeah, or doing metal work and woodwork and getting splinters in your fingers, or a piece of metal in your eyes. I thought cooking's a bit safer, Yeah. Oh, there were a lot of girls in the class. That's another story. And I think, so there was an element of bullying when you were a child, because people, they enjoyed.
They're still kids, and
so then just sort of stand up for yourself. So one thing you learned as a young child is to stand up for yourself and not ever let a bully you. That was okay. I got into trouble all the time. I was always in trouble. Yeah. I think I got a cane once a week and a dab once a day, but it didn't do me any harm,
That's what they do back in those days.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
The reason I wanted to ask is because obviously I came early 2000s, but similar situation. Yeah, my dad is from Portugal, but we came from Venezuela, and same thing. As an immigrant, you come to work. He had businesses in Venezuela, but he came and started working in McDonald's in the kitchen, where nobody wanted to do those jobs either. Or then he joined the French restaurant, same thing, kitchen porter, things like that. So I'm guessing that it doesn't change whatever time period. When you migrate, when you're an immigrant, it is always kind of the same story.
The one thing I'll say these days, a lot of immigrants come over here just to get the benefits of this country. Yeah. Those that want to make a future, those that want to work hard, those that want to achieve,
go through this.
They do this, and it's no different, I won't say. I mean, years ago it was harder just to sit back and do nothing whole, But these days, if you want to achieve your dreams, it's easier because there's less people fighting for those dreams because they're happy to sit back and just take handouts.
I think there's less people, in a way, to put in a way, it's like less people starving, having a hard time, because they got the support of the government there. But back when you came, there was no support, so everybody was fighting for it. Now whoever fights is the people who really want to do something with their life.
I think I remember as a child eating pasta with onions and potatoes nearly every day because it was a cheap dish to do. you know. So if you put pasta with onions and potatoes, I'll throw it over you.
No,
100%, unless it's finely chopped.
I think the
It tastes good actually with cheese, but it's got to be finely chopped. But, my mum, bless her, in those days, she used to cook it just to make sure we had the starch and some vegetables.
Well, it is additional, pasta e patate. Which is nice. I think the culinary world of Italian cuisine has come a long way.
That's right.
These days, especially in Britain, is one of the top,
That's right.
gourmet kitchens. Yeah.
So from going to cooking lessons in your school to then owning restaurants and being in that game, how long passed, and was there cooking lessons maybe a little bit of maybe I would like to do this when I grow up, or did you have another dream?
I think when I was in school, they chose your career for you. So because I didn't take exams, because I wasn't as intelligent as they thought I was, I was actually super intelligent. So my writing was bad because I wrote so fast. Yeah. Because I thought so fast. So I'd finish off the essay before the start of it, but you couldn't read it. Neither could I. That's why I got the
Scribble.
So when I was 12, my father got me. So from the age of 9, I was put to work. Not hard, but at 9 I used to take what you do these days with the people with the bikes. I used to work on a little shop on a corner, and I used to take boxes of vegetables and food to customers. So it's no different now, In those days, you'd have me either with a bike or without a bike, I worked for Judgy Watchorns on a corner. I worked for Mr. Bream on another corner, and I would either deliver newspapers or deliver food in a box, The bike was way too big for me, so I used to always fall off it, but that's fine, When I grew, I could ride it properly.
That's what the lessons are.
So I was used to sort of making some money, Worked for my father in the chip shop, and he paid me occasionally, bless him.
That's family.
Well, fathers teach you. They don't pay you, they teach you, And then, I think the big one then was the learning curve for me was, I then went to become a hairdresser when I was about 12, 13, and then from that then, at the age of 15, I went to work in a pub called the City Centre.
Okay.
And there was a City Centre and La Locanda. Now, La Locanda was a very, very posh restaurant.
Yeah.
City Centre was just a steakhouse, the gammon steak, chicken, and simple stuff. Now, at the age of 15, because I used to work in my father's chip shop, and I was used to cooking 100 portions of chicken and chips for the Liberal Club or for the Labour Club. So we'd be every weekend cooking big, orders, So one day there was a rugby international on, and I was there just collecting glasses, and one of the chefs didn't show up, So they asked me to go in and help with the assistant chef. So I did. I went into this kitchen at the age of 15, and I started cooking as if it was my dad's chip shop. And I took over cooking about 280 meals in that day.
Wow.
Yeah. It didn't even faze me. I just, this is fun. I do 100 in a night, so 280, there's nothing. And then they called the head chef called Vernon Fuchs, who I'm still friendly with now, and I still call chef these days.
Yeah.
And he came in and they looked at me and they gave me a job. And I went, and I said, well, I haven't got qualifications. They said, well, I said, I have, because I bought the results. As an entrepreneur, they cost me £12, I just copied them, Luckily, they were the same results as the year before.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, well, we'll get you into college, part-time. So I went to Colchester Academy,
Okay.
Same thing there, messed around. Yeah. Went to the pub, had a few beers. And then when it was time to take exams, somebody else saw me the results for 20 quid. So all of a sudden you think, am I an entrepreneur? Because I know I need that piece of paper to get a job.
Yeah.
So the age of 16, 17, I've got in fact, I remember passing with distinction, which I thought was great. I didn't even know the word distinction meant then.
Yeah, you see, it's interesting though, because I think a lot of people, I suppose it all depends on your mindset at the same time, because I think people will be going through school, and if they can't do it, they think they're stupid. They're stupid, they give up, and but you clearly had a different mindset. You think, well, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to buy it from this, and I'm going to do it anyway.
Well,
and then
he didn't give up.
Yeah.
He didn't give up, because he could have just sat there, failed the exams, and not even get a job in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Or find a way to deal with life, how it is. That's what you got to do. You got to do it, and then you carry on.
Yeah. So it was good fun. So I mean, so then I was a chef for a while, and I remember getting kicked at the backside for. I remember and I'm still friendly with him now, but I remember once I put the white bait in to cook wrong. I didn't put them in the flour enough, and when I cooked them, it came out as a lump, and he made me eat them, and they were actually raw in the middle. They were disgusting, and that's fine. I never made that mistake again, And then
that's how you learn in kitchens.
Years later, I became a barman. Then I went to work in La Locanda. And then I went and became a waiter in the Fontana di Trevi. And it was Tony Mendita, your father, was there in those days. We all worked together. And then I was offered a job on the ships. So I literally, somebody said they're looking for waiters to work like commie waiters. So I think the first time I tried to go, my father stopped me because he didn't want me to go to America. The second time I said I'm going to Italy to go into the Navy, to do military service. And so my father accepted that. And then instead of doing military service, I
jumped on another ship.
Into another ship. I flew from Genova to Florida, to Fort Lauderdale. And it was like, wow, this huge ship with 1,000 passengers. It was just a great experience. So, and luckily there I met some great people, and they taught me.
Yeah.
And also I used to speak dialect, Italian dialect, and they used to tease me, the waiters. And I said, guys, don't tease me, teach me.
Yeah.
I'm done with being teased, It's a form of bullying. So if you want us to be friends, then teach me. And they did. They taught me fluent Italian. So I speak a dialect now if I need to. Yeah. But I also speak fluent Italian.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
So that was my start of my career. So I literally then went on the ships. The first on vacation was 11 months, which was crazy. It was twice as long, and my parents didn't know where the hell I was. And it took a while for them to realize I was in America, because I sent them, in those days, you send a... No. Telegram. Yeah, which was the worst thing. Telegrams, you always think someone's died in telegrams.
Yeah.
And then after that, I remember, came home, went to Italy, came home to Cardiff, and then I went back to Italy. Then I flew back onto a new ship called the Doric.
All right.
And then I did sort of about 4 different embarkations, made some money, On my last embarkation, I met Ron and Linda Bird, who are great friends of mine. They came to visit in Cardiff, and then together we went to open a restaurant in Colts Neck, New Jersey, But I realised after 2 years in Colts Neck, after 2 years, that was amazing. I mean, to go from being in Cardiff, collecting glasses, chip shop, collecting glasses, and then 3 years later, I'm now in New York City, and in Florida and so on and so forth, doing the Caribbean, and then all of a sudden, you just start learning, you just start growing, you just start realizing, and on the ships, I used to make a lot of money. I used to do. I used to read love letters out for the waiters. I used to write out love letters. I used to help with embarkation. So I used to, make a lot of money doing different things. I can't say too much, but all legal, thank God. Well, most of them.
There's always an element of that.
So it was good fun. So yeah, and then I came back to Cardiff. I remember looking to buy my own business. So I went to a place.
How old were you at this time?
Oh gosh, I was 24.
Wow. Okay.
So I went. So I'd already bought a house when I was 18, 19. I bought a house. My father gave me £1,000 as a deposit, which in those days the house was £12,500. Yeah, so an incredible experience from the age of 18 going onto the ships, and then they just 22 opening a restaurant in New Jersey, and then come back to Cardiff at 24. And I went to a place in Surrey to buy it was a little coffee shop and a little supermarket inside a campsite.
Okay.
And this is where I started learning about manifestation, about belief and stuff. So I remember going to this place, negotiating a deal. I had money put aside. And then about a month later, I'm coming home. I went away, I went clay pigeon shooting. I came home and I phoned this chap and I said, how's the sale going? He said, I've sold it. I said, no, I'm buying it. He said, no, he said, I've sold it to somebody else. And my world fell apart.
Right.
My world fell apart. So this business I was trying to buy for a long time, he sold it to somebody else for maybe £500 more,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I went with my girlfriend at the time, Daphne, and I literally went into town, and there was a coffee shop there called Planters. And manifestation is big because, you know, I was so keen to have my own business, you know. I also went to work in Le Monde and Champers for a while. I sold ice creams for 6 months because I wanted not to lose my money, you know.
Yeah.
I had a year to make sure I made money. So I worked I sold ice creams. I became one of the biggest, busiest ice cream sellers in Cardiff. I would go along to the castle and say, I used to put bids in to do different shows in the castle.
Yeah.
All I had was a van I rented. So I would then win the bid and then sell it to everybody else.
Yeah.
And make a big profit.
Nice.
You know?
Yeah.
Didn't like selling ice creams. I got into trouble because you can't go in people's patches, and I did.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But, you know, being a New Yorker, you know, it didn't bother me, you know.
New York, Welsh, Italian.
Yeah. So then I worked in Le Monde, and the waiters were not nice to me. They were sort of winding me up, you know, as if I'd failed in America. They didn't realize I was looking for a restaurant. So that day when I went into this place called Planters, a guy called Brian Fry said to me, why are you looking so miserable? I said, I'm looking for a business, I said. And the guy was selling me his business. He said, he's a knob. He said, you know, if I can say, I can't say the word tosser or wanker. So he said, he's a knob, you know. He said, well, if you want to buy a business, you can buy my coffee shop. I'm sat in this place. I then negotiated, you know, bought this coffee shop off him, and he didn't, he could have sold it to many other people. Kept his word, you know. And that is now Giovanni's restaurant, 41 years later.
Oh, wow. It's a coffee shop. Wow.
Yeah, so
That's
it found me.
Yeah.
So in life, you see, as a life coach, which I am, which I'll go into in a minute, if you know what you want and you know why you want it, then eventually it'll happen.
Yeah.
What you can't do is give up on it, you know?
Of fixate in one idea and think if that didn't work out, that's it. It's not going to work out. Didn't work out here, but you know, there's plenty more opportunities coming along.
You keep the vision going. Yeah?
Where do you think your mindset comes from? Were your parents very entrepreneurial, or that relentless kind of mindset? Where does it come from?
My parents were just hard workers.
Yeah.
So my father taught me how to work hard. My mother taught me how to smile. You know, and if you've got people skills, then that's half the battle.
Yeah.
You know, so I put business down to 5 things, you know. You buy the best product for the best price. You sell the best product for the best price. You make sure your customers are happy and are telling their friends on social media. You make sure your staff are happy and they're sharing it with other staff and other people on social media. And you make sure nobody steals your money. That's it.
Very simple, but a lot of people forget some of those steps.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
You were saying that your dad was very hardworking and your mom was. Do you think that influenced a lot of who you became? Because obviously, from very young, you were already thinking of business, doing business. Like, did you ever think of going just to get a job and just get a paycheck?
I realized at a young age I was unemployable because I always had my own mindset.
Yeah.
So if I went to work in a restaurant, I would go into the wine cellar and completely blitz it and clean it and organize it. And the staff would say, don't do that. I said, why not? They said, well, you make us look bad. I said, well, I want to do it. Well, you're not going to get any paid, and you're not going to get paid anymore. I said, no, but I'm doing it for me. I didn't even know what that meant in those days. I'm doing it for me. Why? Because one day I'm going to own my own restaurant.
Yeah.
I'm going to organise it this way. And they say, those are stupid. No, they're still my friends.
Yeah.
You know, and amongst my friends, I'm the most successful, and I'm the youngest. But they also gave me some great education.
Yeah.
These friends of mine, they really kept me on the right road, you know, to make sure I didn't misbehave too much as I got older, you know, and that I was sensible. But, you know, we often speak about it, you know. Remember when you were younger, you used to tidy up the storeroom and you just, without people telling you did things? I said, yeah. They said, you know, we get it now, we understand it now, you know. So I think, you know, our parents, they share in their own way what we need to learn, but they don't do it from a book.
Yeah, I think they do it from their own experiences, isn't it? Yeah. Because they can't, like my parents, for example, my dad, for example, he didn't go to university to study business. From what he learned, and when he had mentors himself, people around him.
I think everyone hopes that every generation does better than the last, right? You're supposed to do that little bit more, maybe.
There's a saying I use, you know, teach them, don't just give them.
Yeah.
If you give, they never learn.
Yeah.
There's also this saying, as you know, the famous saying, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. You teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
So it's teaching people is important.
Yeah.
You know? So so then what was quite fun then was when I was a waiter in Le Monde, and Martinez was an amazing man.
I worked for Martinez.
Did you? Absolutely amazing. I mean, many years later, Martinez. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and Martinez. Many years later, I went over and said to him, Martinez. I said, we were in a Marriott hotel. I said, Martinez. I said, you inspired me. You know. And he looked at me. He said, I'm very proud of you. And the fact that he said that made me feel so good. It was just nice for somebody so successful to say to somebody,
100%,
you know, I'm proud of you. And that meant, you know, and even now I still always think about Martinez and speak about Martinez every single day. And I always...
now his legend lives on through Tani, I guess, and what he's doing there.
Yeah, they're doing well, you know. So I think, but the waiters at the time were not nice people. They weren't nice. They made me wash the dishes and made me do all the shitty jobs. And I thought, don't bite. Because when they realise you're going to buy your own restaurant, they will just... Because in life, see, nobody can hurt yourself. Nobody can hurt you more than yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be nasty to people. So if people are nasty, don't be nasty back. Because they will then beat themselves up more than you can ever beat them up. Because, you know, you just stay the way you are all the time, you know.
That's very nice, especially nowadays with like all the bullying and stuff. Because obviously we make the podcast to, you know, to help, not to help, to give a different view. And I think that's a good point, because sometimes you fixate in the bad and you become a mean person yourself. You let those comments build up in you, and those comments can even change the way that you are. But in the long term, if you stay true to yourself, work on yourself and work hard, those because people come and go. You know, you stay friends with those people that you met back then, but you could have moved to another country, never seen them again. But you know, the person who you became with those comments will carry on.
Yeah. We'll get on to the mentoring and the life coaching, which is kind of what you do now alongside the businesses. But there's a gap in between that, which you were actually a massive player in the club scene, right?
Yeah.
Before you go into that, I will say that this man here practically started Mill Lane. For all you Cardiff young guns who go to Mill Lane on a Saturday night, Giovanni started Mill Lane. What was the one you opened? The first one.
Explain what Mill Lane is.
Well, it would be more for Cardiff people. Mill Lane is a strip of clubs, I suppose, in the town.
Yes, it's the first. It was, still is, the first purpose-built cafe quarter in the UK. You know.
Right.
And this is the power of vision and belief. You know.
Yeah.
So after opening Giovanni's in the Hayes, I then realised I wanted to open a second restaurant, and Giovanni became successful. I mean, I started cooking it myself on on a 4-burner cooker, like the one you would use in a house, you know.
Yeah.
And then eventually, you know, we then sort of were able to buy a bigger cooker and a fridge and a proper pizza oven. So we made some money, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember those days when I talk about visualization, belief, and if you ask yourself the question enough, it'll happen. I don't know how. You know, we call it manifestation. And I remember one day saying to my father, you know, I just wish it was bigger, you know, because we had one toilet, we needed more toilets, more storerooms, because we became very busy. We'd already made the bar downstairs much bigger because we had to dig it out, and people said, you can't do that. I said, well, you know, we're going to give it a try, and we got planning, we did it. So we doubled the capacity of the restaurant, but the kitchen was still too small. And then one day, I think after a few years of me wishing that the restaurant was bigger, one day I dropped my keys and they literally fell in between some steps. And I couldn't find them, so we got a torch and we shone them, and there was a room downstairs. And so we went downstairs the next day and we took a piece of what was plasterboard out behind the tiles, and we found a room full of bottles.
Oh wow!
Empty bottles.
Oh.
Yeah.
Full of wine from the 1800s.
So obviously, many years prior, there was somebody there with a challenge in drinking, was hiding the bottles. It wasn't Brian Fry, just in case he's watching, because he drank cocktails. But there was lots of bottles of vodka there. So we emptied that out, and there was a room that was about 12 foot by 12 foot, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then behind there was another room, which was full of bottles, and there was another one again. And then we got to an oven. So it was a huge oven down there. We're not sure what the oven was used for because it was next door to the church. It could have been for pizzas, it could have been for cremations, who knows, you know.
Fair enough.
Maybe there was also a baker's there one day, you know, so it could have been a baker's.
Yeah.
We never really found out. We just sort of took the oven out, you know, and we gave it to St. Fagan's Museum, you know.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if they've used it ever, you know. And that's how we started, you know. So all of a sudden you got this restaurant that started off as a coffee shop and then became what is now 41 years old, you know.
Wow.
I remember then going on an Anthony Robbins. No, I remember then opening the Continental in Mill Lane, Cardiff, a very famous restaurant, and I named it after another famous restaurant called the Continental that was owned by my previous bosses.
So you opened it first as a restaurant or a club?
First as a restaurant,
right?
So I opened it in '86 as a really top class restaurant, cafe, bar, and brasserie.
See how it links together. Yeah, okay.
And so then I remember I used to run back and forth, like crazy, run back and forth, taking orders in both restaurants, you know. I was a lot slimmer then, because of that. I got my steps in. And I remember then saying to myself, oh gosh, I bought a restaurant in the wrong street, because it was 3-lane traffic, small pavements, and it wasn't. There was fighting, there was prostitution, there was drugs being sold. It was a real nasty street.
Was this before they laid over? Because they used to be. It was called Mill Lane because there used to be the water through Mill Lane, right? Was that still there?
So when I bought it, it was a 3-lane traffic.
Right.
Right, and it was just not the right street to be
Right.
in. I remember going on a course with a guy called Anthony Robbins, you know.
Yeah.
And when I came back, I stood on the corner opposite. There's a pub on a corner. Is it called the Cornerstone or something?
It's still there. It's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a pub on the corner, basically.
Yes, I know
right?
which one. Yeah.
And I remember looking down the street and saying, why haven't we got a cafe quarter in Wales, you know, in Cardiff? And so I visualised a cafe quarter. I drew it myself. I then gave it to an architect. There's one really important sentence you've got to use in life, and this I've used it all my life. I don't know how, but I know I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how, but I know I will.
That's it.
And when I opened this restaurant, which at the time was in the town, it was in between Le Monde Brasserie and Giovanni's, right in the middle, opposite the Marriott Hotel. We got busy, but in my head was concerned that the street wasn't a good street.
Yeah.
So I came back from this seminar with Tony Robbins in Birmingham at the time, and closed my eyes, visualised what I wanted to see. Couldn't understand why, as buses were trying to knock me over, there wasn't a cafe quarter in Cardiff, in Wales. So I visualised it, I drew it down, I gave it to a designer to draw it, to an architect, you know, he drew it for me. And then I went to the Marriott Hotel, and I spoke to the manager, Chris Quinn. And then I went to one of the landlords and said to Mr. Ethershaw, you know, do you guys want to help me clean this street up and create a cafe quarter? Of course, they're going to say yes, because it's going to put millions on their business.
Yeah.
I foolishly didn't buy freeholds, you know,
Right.
which is fine. And that's another lesson in life. You know, before you make something cleaner, prettier, and you polish it, make sure you buy it. Don't just rent it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you make people money for other people, which is fine.
Yeah.
So I'm writing another book, and it's called "So You Want to Open a Restaurant with the Words Why in brackets." So it's basically telling people what I did right, and more importantly, what I did wrong.
Amazing.
So you know, you've got to make mistakes to grow.
Yep.
You know, to actually fly over a jungle is different than getting through a jungle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can say I flew over a jungle,
Yeah.
or I got through a jungle.
Yeah.
And it's getting to the side that's exciting, not just listening to a story.
Yeah.
You know, that's the best thing in life, you know.
Yeah.
I then took this piece of paper, this big plan, to the council.
Yep.
Took it to the council, and so I went there and, you know, had it all ready and spoke to them about this great idea of cafe quarters in Cardiff, you know. And they looked at me and said, okay, that sounds like a great idea. And they just put it down, you know, left it with them and heard nothing else. So it ended up on the bottom of a pile of other ideas.
Right.
So I said, okay, what else can I do? 'Cause it's all about changing your approach. And I thought, what else can I do? Because they've ignored that now. So we built a 12-foot by 12-foot scaled model of a cafe quarter. You know, and we took it to the council the second time and said, this idea we've got, you know, can we use it? And they and they looked at it. Oh, it sounds like a good idea. We actually left it there, and they moved it from office to room to room to room. Eventually, somebody saw it, they liked it. A guy called Nick Hamilton, who was the city centre manager, and he said, "Look," he said, "I can help you guys make this happen, you know, but it's I can't get involved. It's got to be your idea. I can tell you how to make it work," which he did. And then we got £1 million from the government, you know, from the WDA and the council. It was designed properly, and then all of a sudden, you know, about 2 years later, we had this beautiful cafe quarter. So yeah, this was about 28, 29 years old. It must be at least, you know.
And that was the birth.
Yeah.
And at what point did all the other people want to come and put clubs and think, you know, at what point did it turn into that?
What was funny, we used to have weekly meetings that nobody ever came to. It was just me and these are the two people and a few people from the council and so on and so forth. And nobody ever attended, you know. But we never give in. And there were so many times where I could have given in with this cafe quarter.
Yeah.
I chose not to, you know, because in life it's so easy just to quit.
Yeah.
When something's just so close. There's a poem called "Don't Quit." It's all about you never know how close you are to your dream.
Yeah.
You know, so rest, but don't quit.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when it came to dividing the pavement up, everybody turned up.
Oh yeah. I bet.
We had to get a room 4 times the size because they all wanted a piece of the pavement. And I went, that's fine, that's okay. Because in life, you've got to tap yourself on the shoulder and say, well done.
Yeah.
You know, because in life, either you are somebody who makes it happen as a leader, or you're a follower.
Yeah.
Always be a leader.
Yeah.
I told my children, always be a leader, always be a leader.
Yeah.
If you're a leader, you get lots of stuff in your face, but once you get through it, you feel great.
You made change.
So that's it. So this was about 28, 29 years old, the cafe quarter, but people will assume it's always been there.
Yeah.
It hasn't. I pioneered it. It was my vision, my belief, my passion.
Yeah.
Just to bring to Cardiff what we had in Italy. Because what was funny, the first times I put my tables and chairs outside in Giovanni's and Hayes, the council used to take them away thinking we were throwing them out. And I'd have to chase them down the road to take them off the van and say, no, it's called al fresco. And the guy thought it was some jazz singer,
Yeah.
But,
It wasn't a thing sitting outside. Yeah. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I was 21, I managed a nightclub in Cardiff called Fatso's, in between leaving America, before I went to open the restaurant in America, I literally for a year opened a restaurant called Fatso's for a guy called Eddie Pointer, and turned it into the best club in Cardiff at the age of 21, right? And then I left to go and live in America and open a restaurant in America. And I swore never again to go into nightclubs or bars, because it wasn't my life. Many years later, when I came back and created the cafe quarter, we couldn't serve drinks outside because our license was a restaurant license.
Yeah.
So they gave us what you call a full-on license. Now, with a full-on license means you can now serve drinks without food. So all of a sudden, you end up serving less food and more drinks, and before you know it, you become a bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then my upstairs, I moved the restaurant. I remember the Continental, I remember moving it. After Rugby International, I just moved it upstairs in 2 days. And then the customers came back and go, well, where's the restaurant gone?
Yeah.
Didn't tell anybody. It was upstairs,
Yeah.
And then downstairs, called it Gio's. With them, and years later, became Capu and Ladybird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, after all those, after all those years of
Staying away from a club.
I then opened up Conti's and then Latinos. And then after Latinos, it became then Ladybird, my son,
which your
and
son.
then Capu. Number 10, again, back to visualization, back to belief, back to manifestation. Number 10, basically, right, didn't just happen, I had one day, I used to have leaks behind the bar, and the lady, Japanese lady called Chicago, she used to come upstairs and say, "Oh, we have leaks again." It didn't sound like that, and I'd apologise. And I remember this one time I went downstairs, and as I went downstairs, they had all these little saucepans everywhere, stopping the water going on the customers, giving them little umbrellas. I went, wow, this is amazing. This will make a great club.
Yeah.
This
was 10 million.
So all of a sudden, I walked downstairs to a place I'd never been in.
Yeah. I can see
below
it.
me.
I can see it, yeah.
And I went downstairs, there was this huge, big tapenaki where they used to cook on. The place was very quiet.
Yeah.
And in the kitchen, there's this little man who was amazing, he was. And he was Chicago's, the owner's husband,
right,
who once was a big boss in banking in Japan. And a lovely man. I said to him, "Are you happy doing this?" He said, "No." He said, "I hate it." I said, "Shall I put an offer in and buy it?" He said, "Oh, yes, please." And he's, so Chicago, I think, was his geisha when he was a bank manager. So as a bank manager, he was a very well-off man, who achieved so much, who was a beautiful man. And all of a sudden, he's there and he's literally washing dishes and helping around.
Mm.
So I came up with a plan, and I offered her more than it was worth, and I also gave her 10% shares. Nice. And she wanted to come and help, So all of a sudden, I literally just sort of took all the stuff out. The big tapanaki cooking area, I took it out and I fiberglassed it, and that became my champagne storage. We filled it with champagnes, then we did caviar, champagnes, and some food, you know. And then all of a sudden, then it just became a really successful. We had a restaurant there as well. Then we closed the restaurant because it wasn't worth it, you know.
Yeah.
And just became Number 10s, and it was the most famous ever nightclub in Cardiff.
And even though you don't have it now, it's still going strong.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
I mean, a different style now, you know.
Yeah, different. Yeah. Music's changed, scenes changed, people's changed.
Yeah, but they've kept the name, and the name seems to work because people. The reason the name works because
it's not number 12, is it?
No, number 10. no, it's still number 10. Right. But you see, if you imagine growing up and your parents saying, "Oh, I'm going to Number 10s."
Yeah.
I've been to Number 10s. You know, and the door was like 10 Downing Street. It was designed. I had it, you know.
Yeah, that's good.
Children then realised that Number 10s was a very, very famous nightclub. Yeah, you know. Yeah.
So saying all that, going through business, going through life, you know, how important do you think image is? Obviously, you've been on many TV programs. You do it on social media as well, which is great. You're big. I mean, you're someone which people look at and they, I suppose, aspire to be like in a way. You know. So how important is your image? Saying all that, do people treat you different based on how you are, how you look, and you know, what level of importance you put it on going through business and life? Your image. Dressing well.
Let me tell you a little story about that, right? Because last week I was on stage twice with Darren Brown.
Okay.
You know, so I literally, want to be on stage with him. You know, I was on stage with him 2 years ago, I think, in the New Theatre, and I enjoyed it. You know, and as an NLP practitioner, as a life coach, you know, and understanding hypnotherapy, you know, I just want to be in that place, you know, and to be potentially. Semi-hypnotized by Darren Brown. And I thought to myself, I've got to get on this stage. I've got to be on. Then I realised I hadn't even bought tickets. So I went there to buy tickets and there were no tickets left. So I literally just sat there with a friend of mine and we waited and waited and waited and eventually 2 tickets became available. You know? So I went on, I was on the stage, there was this amazing trick where he throws paper into the crowd and then somebody passes. And what's funny is this, I got tickets, one was row 4, one was row 24. And I took the ticket further back, which wasn't me. I let my manager sit in the front. Then all of a sudden this guy throws me this ball, there's 2,700 people and I end up with this ball. You know, I go up on stage. To me, it's always been about advertising. What I do is about advertising myself and my businesses.
Okay.
So before social media came out, I was known as the best self-publicist person in Wales and one of the top in the UK.
That's what my father always said about you. He said you're one of the best marketeers.
Yeah. I just enjoyed, and I'd always ask myself a question, you know, how can I get on television?
Yeah.
How can I did some crazy things over the years to be on some major TV shows, you know?
Yeah.
So it's all about advertising. You see, ego, you control ego. You've got a thing called ego and conscience, you know? And, you know, you've got to be fully aware that your ego is there to serve you, you know? Yeah. You've got to know when to turn it on and off, you know? Yeah. So an ego to me is where you do it to make others smile as well as yourself. You do it to make others feel proud as well. Yeah. You know, if it's just for you, then you're not living in the real world. Yeah. You know?
It's a fine line, I think people confuse as well, you know?
Yeah, very much so, you know?
Ego is not necessarily always a bad thing, is it? You know, if it's controlled.
Yeah. So ego, so there's a thing called 6 human needs, you know? And one of them is, and one of them is significance. I know. So, you know, if you look at ego and significance, they're similar. Yeah. You know, we all need significance.
If you focus on it too much, you lose connection.
That's right.
Yeah, I know.
You got it. You know, so that's important, you see. You know.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah, you got it.
I know.
I worked for him for 17 years.
Did you?
I used to go to all the
events. Do you know Tony Robbins?
Of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I used to volunteer all the time, you know.
Yeah. saying all that, I suppose coming to a nice end here. Like I said, our goal with this is to always, I suppose, inspire younger generations, to give them something to work off and learn off. Everyone's story is different and everyone's experiences are different. But I suppose it's a mindset, right? So I suppose the final kind of wrapping up question to you would be to all the younger generations. And I say younger generations, we're a much younger generation than you are. So it's the generations younger than us and the generations that are up and coming, and even our generation, you know. If there was one piece of advice that you could give, I guess, to the younger people who are still finding themselves, they don't know what to do, you know?
Yeah.
You think life is hard and difficult?
Yeah.
Is there ready to come out? 3 letters. Why?
Mm-hmm.
That's the best advice you can give yourself or anybody in life. See, if you do something because you want to do it, that's great. If you know why you want to do it, then that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because a lot of students go to university to study for 3, 4, 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then they become waitresses or waiters, or they just become singers because they don't say why. You know, why do I want to study medicine? You know, when I want to be a singer. You know, why do I want to be a teacher? Because my mother and father was a teacher.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you go to buy something, you know, why do I want this? You know, do I need this?
Mm-hmm.
No, I know for a fact I got, you know, so much storage of stuff I didn't need or use for a while, and then, you know, one day I'll sell it. So if you ask yourself why, and you follow your dreams, knowing that you're doing what you're doing because you ask yourself the why, then that's half the battle. You know,
Yeah.
the amount of people that just go off on one and then wait so many years, you know.
Don't know why,
Yeah. You know, why do I want to marry this person? You know, why do I want to, you know, go on holiday? You know, you know, if you say I want to go skiing and you fly to Paris, well, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, why do I want to go to Paris
Yeah.
to ski? Well, there's no snow in Paris.
Yeah.
You can abseil, but there's no snow. So, you know, so the most important, the word is why. I think the most important thing is this, is to believe you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is to remind yourself you can.
Yeah.
It's just to take advice of people, but then listen to your own advice.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, just if you imagine driving in a car with 4 people behind you, and they're all telling you which way to go, but you got the map,
Yeah.
which is the map of your life,
Yeah.
and they're telling you, no, don't do this, do that, don't go here, go back, go forward, go left, go right. A year later, you're going to be in the same place
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if you haven't crashed.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's important in life is when you say to yourself, you know, saying, I'll take advice, I'll listen to your advice,
Yeah.
but I'm going to tell myself in which direction I'm going to travel.
Yeah.
And also, here's the best thing, if I come off, right, too soon, or not soon enough, if I make a mistake on the journey of life, and I end up going down the lanes instead of going, you know, down the motorway, and I end up going through the countryside, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Open your eyes and appreciate what's in front of you.
Yeah.
Then get back on the motorway.
Yeah.
Because to get on the motorway from A to B, great. You now have made all this money. You haven't really enjoyed life. You've just become richer to prove to others you could be richer and more powerful.
Yeah.
And there's always somebody more powerful and more richer.
100%.
So what's the point?
Yeah.
Enjoy the journey.
It's not about the destination.
Yeah. So A, enjoy the journey, right? Or no, that's the last one. So A, know what you want
Yep.
and why you want it. B, take your own advice. And C, enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
Really nice.
I think that's some powerful advice to.
That's a really
To
nice way
finish
to
on.
end the podcast.
Yeah, there you go. It's the Giovanni Malacrino.
And thank you for my
Hey.
first cigar
Thank you very
in the
much,
best
man.
part of 20 years.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much, sir.
And yes,
It's been a pleasure. If you're ever in Cardiff, 100% go and check out all his restaurants. He's got 3 in Cardiff. And hopefully you'll see him there. He's always running around between the three, right?
Yeah.
But he's all on social media, so we'll drop some of his links below.
We'll drop his links below.
You can follow
and also thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed doing this. All the best with this. I think it's a great.
Thank you.
It's a great concept. So well done.
Thank you very much.
There you go. On the next one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.